Hello, good day, everyone. My name is Ronnie Daef, and this will be the first presentation for module number 5. Today, we are going to explore the foundational theories of interaction that define modern distance education. We are going to focus on the synthesis by the works of George Holmberg. That will be the concept of guided didactic conversation, along with Michael Moore's framework of the three types of interaction. So both theories argue that distance education is not merely the delivery of information, but a structured communicative process that must mimic the spirit of personal conversation to be effective. So today we are going to just focus on learning objective number 1 of the module number 5, explain the key points of the three theories of interaction by Holmberg, Moore, and Anderson. But for this report, we are just going to focus on Holmberg's guided didactic conversation and Moore's three types of interaction, as I have mentioned earlier. So our analysis today will strictly use those sources since those are the sources that is assigned to me. And the Anderson theorem will be discussed by another report within our group. So to start with, in 1983, George Holmberg introduced his theory called the guided didactic conversation, which explains how distance education can feel more personal and engaging through structured communication between the teacher and the learner. So he built his theory on 7 postulates that describe how effective learning can occur even when the teacher and student are physically separated. So on his postulate number 1, he states that the feelings of personal relation between the teaching and learning parties promote study, pleasure, and motivation. Postulate number 2 notes these feelings can be fostered by self-instructional material and two-way communication. Um, Postulate number 3 argues that intellectual pleasure favors the attainment of study goals and proper methods. Postulate 4 suggests that the atmosphere and language of friendly conversation favor those feelings of personal relationship. Postulate number 5 posits that messages in conversational forms are easily understood and remembered. Postulate number 6 asserts that this conversation concept can be successfully translated for distance media. And finally, the postulate number 7 emphasizes that planning and guiding are necessary for organized study. So together, these 7 postulates show that effective distance learning is dependent on structured communication and meaningful personal connection. The theory that he proposed in 1988 suggests that conversational presentations support motivation and facilitate learning more effectively than impersonal textbooks. So testing the theory involved attempts to falsify it through the 3 university level studies. So a German course on educational planning, a course on distance education essentials, and an English grammar course. So based on his testing, the results show a progressive outcome supporting the theory. Although the results were not statistically significant, students reported feeling more personally involved, and there were marginal achievement gains observed in the third study. So according to Holmberg, the characteristics of guided didactic conversations can be described as follows. The first one is easily accessible presentation using clear colloquial language that are easy to read and have a moderate level of content density. Second, characteristic is the provision of explicit advice and suggestions on what to do or avoid, along with the reasons behind them. The third characteristic is invitations for an exchange of views, questions, and judgments. Fourth will be the attempt to involve the students emotionally in order to foster personal interest and engagement. The fifth one is a personal style that includes the use of personal pronouns like I, you, or we. And finally, the demarcation or separation of changes in themes through typography, different speakers, or pauses. So Holmberg's theory is important because it reframed distance education as a conversational and motivational process rather than simple content delivery. While Holmberg emphasized conversational communication, Moore extended this perspective by recognizing interaction into distinct types within distance education. So we now move to Michael Moore's 1989 framework, the three types of interaction. So his goal was to distinguish among the different sub-meanings of interaction in order to improve program planning in distance education. This framework was developed in response rather to what Moore described as a crude construct or overly broad and imprecise terms that often confuse distance education practitioners. So in other words, the term interaction here was being used too generally without clearly identifying the different ways learners actually interact in distance learning environment. So the first framework, as per Moore, is the learner content interaction. So he defines it as the intellectual processing of the subject matter that leads to cognitive change. So the value of this type of interaction is that it results in changes in the learner's understanding, perspective, or even their cognitive structures. A historical practice sample can be seen in the 19th century home study guides, which accompanied a text and provided explanations and directions for studying the material, allowing learners to interact with the content independently. So a vital point of synthesis of these two materials is that the concept of the internal didactic conversations. So in 1989, Moore explicitly stated that his first type of interaction, the learner-content interaction, is at least partly involved with what Holberg calls the internal didactic conversation. So this refers to the idea of learners talking to themselves about the information and ideas they encounter in text or lectures. And Holmberg in 1983 also described this as a learning strategy in which learners reflect on quietly and in solitude, essentially mulling things over and holding a conversation with themselves to better understand and retain new learning materials. So more second type of interaction is the instructor interaction, which refers to the interaction between the learner and the subject expert or the instructor itself. Its primary value is that it provides reality testing and individualized feedback that helps learners verify their understanding of the subject matter. A practical example of this is interaction is correspondence tutoring, where an instructor provides individualized analogies or supplementary readings to address a specific learner's misunderstanding. The third one is the learner to learner interaction, which is defined as the interaction between one learner and the other learner or peers. So the value of this interaction lies in the social construction of knowledge and peer analysis, where learners learn from one another by sharing perspectives and evaluating ideas. As a practical example of this, more highlights undergraduate peer discussion, which may include weekly student presentations and group feedback, encouraging the development of expertise among adult learners. So Moore's framework clarifies that interaction in distance education is not a single concept, but a structured system involving content, instructors, and peers. So in conclusion, Holmberg and Moore argues that interaction remains the core of distance education. So their work shows that combining the conversational spirit of Holmberg in 1983 with the planned interaction types of Moore in 1989 can support academic success. So by intentionally designing for dialogue and meaningful interaction, we help develop self-directed learners who can reflect, collaborate with others, and apply learning beyond the classroom. So these are our references. Homework, guided didactic conversation in distance education, and Moore's editorial, the three type of interaction. So I will be posting the discussion prompts along with this presentation in our discussion forum. Thank you so much everyone for watching.